What is mayoral candidate Coral Evans' position on property taxes?
I can tell you, though, that people can lose their home because they can't pay the new property taxes that come along with that growth. I can tell you that.
We'll get back to that later. First, we need to talk about the city budget. In June, Councilmember Coral Evans and two others voted against the fiscal year 17 city budget, in part because it would not raise the property tax levy retroactively for the past 5 years. In this clip from June, she explains why raising the levy is important to her.
Okay, so basically, had we taken this particular increase every year, it would have been approximately $74 in total to houses that are worth approximately $300,000 a year. And we would currently have here at the city an extra $1.7 million to spend on things like parkland, or better yet, public work yard, or whatever the council decided that we want to spend that particular money on. Is that correct? Okay, so I just wanted to help clarify that for individuals up here as to why I voted against that particular item. Because again, I think there's funding out there to be available for things that we need here at the city that we're not taking advantage of.
Well, the city needs annual revenue for sure, but with an almost $50 million surplus in fiscal year 17, even if it amounted to the full $1.7 million, are we really giving away much needed funds? Would you like to take into consideration that the city has increased employee benefits, increased necessary infrastructure spending, and hasn't reduced the quality of city services, all without raising property taxes in the last 5 years? So if we don't raise the tax levy, what are some alternative sources of city revenue? How about bonds?
We are actually going to the voters and asking them to pass a bond initiative, which will be a secondary property tax. So what we're just doing, this is just totally a political kind of decision. We're not going to tax you here, but we're going to tax you here.
Prop 412 is a great example for comparison. Prop 412 would authorize the city to sell general obligation bonds to raise $12 million in revenue to build a new courthouse downtown. In this case, the bond is voter approved, and the money is paid back over time by extending the current property tax rates, not increasing them. Councilmember Putsova failed to mention that key point for some reason. Another source of revenue are fees.
I just want to point out to the citizens of Flagstaff, we have not taken this levy in the last 5 years, but we have drastically increased service charges here at the city in the last 5 years. For example, Parks and Recreation, we have drastically increased that. Library fees, we've increased that. We've increased cemetery fees for you to get buried and put a headstone and all that. We've totally increased that. Businesses, I want to make sure that businesses know that they've also been impacted, especially like, for example, restaurants. We now have a hood service fee where someone goes in and has to check that, and we charge a fee for that we didn't charge before. So we have a whole bunch of new fees instead of taxes. So I guess maybe this should have been called, instead of a tax levy, it should have been called a fee, because that way we would probably have it. We have a lot of fees. In addition to those fees, we now have a new street tax. We have some new bond projects that we're going to have. So it's not like we're not taxing. We're just calling it something different, and I think that that's just a political dog whistle and misnomer.
Unfortunately, our council member is extremely wrong here. First and foremost, fees are not taxes, as she suggests. Councilmember Evans either doesn't understand the difference herself, or she's being purposely misleading. And secondly, fees are specifically applied for the use of a city service. It's a clear pay-as-you-go scenario. If you're not using a city service, you don't pay the fee. So it seems that Coral Evans and others on council desperately wanted to raise property taxes for fiscal year 17, even asking staff to find a way to make it happen mid-year, even though all legal deadlines for such an increase had expired by that time. Staff and the mayor both reminded them that the proper time to discuss such an increase was at the budget hearings in April.
I remember us trying to have a conversation about this, but I also remember that the majority of council shut the conversation down. It was one of those things, how many people would support moving forward with this type of conversation, and it never got off the table.
So, ironically, by Coral Evans' own words, during the budget sessions, the entire city council voted democratically 4-3 not to discuss the tax increase. Forget property taxes, does Coral Evans still uphold the democratic process even if she doesn't get her way? Either way, based on that discussion, we can assume that Coral Evans believes that raising the property tax levy is a necessary source of revenue and not a financial burden to the property owners of Flagstaff.
I can tell you, though, that people can lose their home because they can't pay the new property taxes that come along with that growth. I can tell you that. I can tell you that just on my street alone, the property taxes have I think, gone up 4 times because of the new development. While some people can afford to pay their property taxes, I can tell you, Mrs. Smith down the street, she's struggling. So those are things we as a community need to be mindful of and need to understand and need to make sure that everybody has a right to stay in the house that they work their butts off to get.
So in this clip from a recent mayoral debate on October 24th, it appears as though Ms. Evans is equating higher property taxes with people losing their homes, specifically seniors in the South Side neighborhood. But where was her concern for those same seniors when she demanded a 10% increase in June?
And we have not been taking advantage of the fact that we could actually take, it's like a cost of living increase here for our city budget. Because I'm trying to remember exactly how much that is worth annually and how much we have actually given away in the past 4 years.
If property taxes increase due to either new development or a city council decision, what difference does it make to the homeowner? The council decision would be a guaranteed increase, while the effects of new development are purely speculative. Don't you think our elected representatives should understand the difference?